advice of his sons.
Well,
Or
okay.
his offers of this from the sons.
Correct. I agree with you. What I think might be a little practical to us is that sometimes it is hard for parents to listen to their children when their children are telling them to do things. Because it feels like the role is now reversed and you feel like you've lost your identity, your power, your authority, your whatever word you want to adjective you want to place in there. Okay? So, yes, I agree. Jacob is wrong. He should go down and try to recover his son Simeon. He doesn't listen to Reuben. And in this chapter, we have Judah now stepping back up and saying basically the same thing. I'm going to be in charge of him. It didn't work for Reuben. And now Judah is trying the same thing. Maybe he'll listen to Judah. Ooh, I don't know. But what the point is that it's listening to children when you're the parent is difficult, right? And I think that any parent that is over the age of 65, let's say, has had that happen once or twice, right? Your children tell you, do this thing, and you're like, absolutely not. You can't tell me what to do. I think that's real life, okay?
Pastor, I looked up the name of Israel, because God changes Jacob to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And it means let God prevail. So there's this change in which we see that there's going to be a change in Jacob's life. I mean, it brings us hope when we, that's what I felt like when we see this change.
Your definition of prevail is very, very nice. Okay? The root for Israel, remember that God changes Jacob's name to Israel after he wrestles with him. Okay? So we have to keep in mind the theme of wrestling when we're considering the meaning of the word. Because Israel, if you think about Israel as a nation, after they're in the promised land, what is the Israelites' relationship with God? How would you describe that?
Spiritual struggles?
Struggles. I think like contention would be like a fair word to say.
Not just physical stuff, but
yeah.
spiritual.
So yes, it means that God is going to win, but in this wrestling of God that the Israelite nation is doing, yes, Israel wins because they win the promised land because God gave them the power to defeat all of the Canaanites and all of the other ites. But also, it's more, we need to think about it more as an internal struggle battling against sin that the Israelites have on a constant basis. And I think that Israel, the person, Jacob, also experiences that struggle because he's had, like we've talked about many times, right? It's the roller coaster. Jacob's life goes up and down and all around, and you never know how he's going to be. Right now, Jacob, we can say, is in a pretty deep valley, right? And if I don't want to put this on anyone here, but all of us have at least known someone who has been really depressed, right? And so when you're in this deep valley of depression, you can't see out of it. This is all that you can see, right? That's in front of you. And I think that Jacob is in that valley where he can't even conceive of saving his own son Simeon. Even though we all know that's what he's supposed to be doing, he's just mourning the fact that Rachel has died and Joseph has died in his mind because he doesn't know what actually happened yet. And he just wants to save Benjamin. It's the only thing, right? So I think we need to, yes, we can totally be hard on Jacob. He should not be doing what he's doing. But when we add in the emotional factor, I think we can notice Jacob's behavioral patterns as things that all humans do. So we can't be too harsh on him, if that makes sense. Okay? So you had a question with that? Or a comment?
No, just a comment that as we read through this chapter, we learn that there's a real change with Jacob.
Yeah.
And he's doing the more righteous.
So I want us, instead of let God prevail, because I mean God is in the name. I want us to think about it as more of a like a give and take, like a battle kind of thing. Like we need to remember that it's the wrestling with God that Israel is doing. Okay.
More spiritual level.
Well, I mean, it was physical in that moment, right? But and I think for Jacob, it's less spiritual now in this chapter, and it's more emotional now. So I think for Jacob, it's been on every level, and right now he's just dealing with the emotions of all of it, and it's too much for him to take. Okay. Okay. Good. What else?
He's being told, well, if you come to a decision and let us take Benjamin, you would have already been there, gotten the food, been back, you're delayed.
We could have done it like you're holding up the train, right? Like they're saying it's your fault, basically, that we don't have Benjamin back. Or the food. So is that, how do we feel about that mindset? It's the truth. B, I don't know if that's necessarily helpful, right? When you're telling someone who's depressed, well, you need to be doing this, that doesn't go over too well, right?
God, it would start off, wake him up.
And that is a really good example of how good intentions don't matter. Right? I can have the best intention by telling someone you need to do this, and if that's not what they need, it's what I think they need, that's not going to be helpful. Right? So we have to, I hate this expression, but it's true, we have to meet people where they're at. Right? We have to be able to recognize when it's necessary to use the law and when it's necessary to use the gospel. Right?
And at this point, they don't know that Joseph
Correct.
is who he is. I mean, and they don't understand all of this manipulation or whatever you want to call
Oh
it.
no, I think manipulation is the perfect word for it. And when we think about, gosh, I don't even remember the chapter. I'm gonna guess it must be 37. And these are the generations of Jacob. Right? When we think about what has happened in Jacob's life, right? His name means deceiver. His name means heel. Like, not great meanings to your name. And even Israel, to contend with God. Like, I You know how positive that is, you know? He's been through it. He's been through the ring. I feel really badly for Jacob when I read Genesis. Yes, I feel bad for Abraham and Sarah. They couldn't have a kid. They waited a really long time. God gave it to them. God talked to Abraham more often than he talked to Jacob. Jacob's just like, he's had a rough life. He's been dealt a hard hand. And I think we all know someone, maybe in our families or outside of our families, where like we say the same thing, like, yeah, like they haven't had it easy. You know, they've had it rougher than most other people.
But is it making him stronger for it?
That is the way that we can justify the things that happen to us, because we say, well, you know, if God pulled you through that, he'll pull you through something else. And that's kind of sometimes all we have to hold on to. And why do we hold on to it? Because it's a promise that God has given to us, and God keeps his promises, right? But it's also, again, when you're really depressed and you say, oh, well, God will just bring you through, that's not a helpful thing to say, right? So, good. These are good comments. There's some more stuff here. Like, I think it's really important for us to talk about Reuben versus Judah. Okay, so remember I told you that I don't need you to have all of the sons memorized in order, but I want you to memorize the first four. So which ones are the first four? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Okay, so Reuben is the firstborn. He's the one that tells the brothers, don't sell Joseph, or don't kill him. Maybe we can just sell him instead, right? Judah is the one who said that he wants to sell him. So Simeon and Levi are the ones that after that incident with Dinah, went and killed all of the people in the city to vindicate their family, and Jacob has said basically, you are not helpful for me, right? So like Simeon and Levi, even though that they're second and third born, they kind of fall out of favor with Jacob pretty quickly, and so we're really kind of seeing the relationship between Reuben and Judah and how that plays out for the rest of Genesis. Reuben, we saw in the last chapter, and we've talked about already this morning, really tries to get Jacob to do the right thing. Jacob does not listen to his firstborn son. Judah is now basically saying the same thing, and Jacob is going to say that it's okay. So, in Jacob's mind, who is the leader of the brothers? Judah. Okay? So, when we have the 12 brothers, and we think about the 12 different tribes of Israel, and we think about the line of Christ, it goes through Judah, the fourth born son. This is why. Okay? And it's a hard, like, you have to read the story, and you have to read it through all of the way in order to kind of get that concept out of there. Because otherwise, we say to ourselves, well, it should be Simeon. Well, Simeon's enslaved in Egypt right now, so that's, you know what I mean? Like, he's not living with his dad anymore. It's not even going to be a thing. Levi just kind of falls completely out of the picture. And the only verse we have about that is what Jacob says after the whole incident with Dinah, that Simeon and Levi have become a burden to him.
And Reuben, being the firstborn, I'm sure that Israel thought that he would take a stronger leadership role. And what does he do? He has an affair with one of his father's wives.
Yeah.
Which is really tacky.
Which, I think that is the best way to possibly say that.
And then when he does step forward and try to impress his father, maybe he was sincere,
Oh, no, I think he was sincere.
His solution was, okay, I'll do this job and you can kill my 2 sons if I screw up. It's like, that's not really helpful.
Here, I'm gonna offer you a sin to make up for my sin that I did.
Yeah.
Like
He's
what?
not showing, that's not the person you want leading your
Right.
family,
Right.
so.
Correct. So Reuben is kind of like out of the picture now. But then we have to think to ourselves, well, what about Judah? Judah's not perfect either. What did Judah do? See, it's hard for us to keep our chapters straight, right?
Yeah.
So what did Judah do in Genesis?
Isn't he the one that pulled him out of the, said, let's sell him instead of?
He's the one that said, sell Joseph,
Rather
but
than
what
kill
else
him.
did Judah do? He's the one, what was that, 5 chapters ago? Chapter 39? Or was it 38? 38. That whole day when we talked about Tamar, right? His daughter-in-law.
Oh.
I'm expecting more light bulbs to come on. You don't remember that day?
Oh,
Yeah, we do? So,
Keep flipping the switch.
he... So, Judah did not treat his daughter-in-law well, ends up sleeping with her, and what happened after that? Do you remember? She gets pregnant, and then what is Judah gonna do?
Bring her out and let her be burned.
He says, let's kill her. She's pregnant. Right? Like this, what? This is not patriarch behavior.
Not manning up.
He's not manning up. Okay? So, Judah is by no means without guilt. And yet, for some reason, he is the one that is picked and not the 5th in line, because that's what I would do, right? First one messed up? No. Second, third one messed up? No. Fourth one messed up? No. Let's go to the 5th. We don't hear anything about Gad, right? So, there we go.
Was Judah Leah's son, or
Yeah.
was the other?
No, Leah's 4th son.
So maybe Gad and the others were from the
From the,
other wives.
yep.
The not special wives.
Yeah. But Leah had 2 more after that. I think Issachar and Naphtali. I would have to check. Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan. Maybe Asher and Naphtali. So yeah. Okay. Something else that we need to remember about the Tamar story in chapter 38. What happened that allowed Judah to sleep with Tamar? What did Tamar do? She lied because she changed her dress, right? He thought that she was a prostitute because she dressed up as one. Okay, and what did Tamar want? Birthrights to marry Judah's 3rd son, right? And so what did Tamar request from Judah? His cord, his staff, and a signet ring, right? And the word for that in Hebrew is pledge. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn back to 43. Verse 8. And Judah said to Israel his father, Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge for his safety. So that word comes up in the Judah narrative. How did Judah's pledge work out in chapter 38?
Pretty good for Tamar.
Pretty good for Tamar, not so great for Judah. He didn't really stick to his word, right? And now Judah's saying, oh wait, no, you can trust my pledge. The reader, us, is like, no, you can't. Right? And I think that's what makes, especially the second third, or the last third of Genesis so intriguing to read. Because we've already mentioned this morning, well, we know what's going on, but they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
The author has clued us in to what is actually happening here, and we have to read it in order to find out. That's what makes the reading interesting. If you read classic novels, right, the great authors of the 16th, 17th, 18th century, they do this all the time. Especially if you read, like, The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a larger book, but you know what actually happened in the first chapter, and basically the entire book is how everyone else finds out what happens in the first chapter. And so that's what makes the whole thing interesting through the ups and downs of this guy's life and all of the different places he goes. He's trying to get the truth from the first chapter out into the world. And then at the end, obviously, he does, and it's all happy. But the struggle is real, right? And so that's kind of what is happening here with Jacob and his sons. Okay? Comments, questions, concerns? Good to go? All right. Verse 11. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise. Go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your brother and Benjamin. And as for me, I am bereaved of my children. I am bereaved.
Trying to pay off trying to get kindness with payoff.
Okay,
Material.
correct. But like, does anybody else see what, like, when I read this, I think to myself, wait a minute. We're sending food to buy food because there's no food. That just doesn't make sense in my mind, right?
Choice fruits of the land. In a drought.
In a famine, there's not gonna, I mean, maybe that makes them more, maybe they were dried fruit, you know what I mean? I have no idea, right? But I read this and I'm like, this is like, ooh, I don't know, okay? I mean, have any of you tried like these diets where you're allowed to have like this much peanuts a day or something, and then you get like this much yogurt for lunch, and then you get that, you know, so maybe they're tired of living off of nuts, because that, I mean, it's good for a snack, but it's not going to last you through the day kind of thing, okay? And so maybe they got a whole bunch, and they want some bread to go with their nuts. Like, I don't know how that works out, but I know that I would not be able to live off of honey, pistachio nuts, and almonds. That would be a problem for me personally. Okay? Anything else? So they're trying to buy him off. Okay?
They're doing bartering.
They're doing bartering. Bartering is not a sin, right? I give you this if you give me that. It's basic commerce. I mean, basically every purchase you make is a barter, right? Someone says, I will give you this TV for $600. The barter is, I'm giving you money in return for this other thing. So instead of goods, we're just doing it with money. So that's not a sin to do that. It might be a sin to bribe him to thinking about letting Simeon leave.
Yet we're seeing that he's trying to show honesty by returning the money that was found in the sack as well as more money, right?
Right, so he's trying to do the right thing. I mean, the right thing would have been give back the money once you realize that it's that you have it, right? That's the right thing to do. They didn't, they took it with them, right? So A, not great. B, they're bringing it back a little later, months later, a year later. We're not exactly, pardon?
It's like leverage.
It's like
A
leverage,
little more.
a little bit more. Like it seems weird to me that they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna give you back this thing that we should have given you back before, so now you should love us.
Yeah.
Well, the father's making that decision.
Yeah, it's just weird, you know, to me. What else? I would love it, because I'm the youngest person in this room, and my English is somewhat 21st century, okay? If someone can explain to me what the verb bereave means, I would appreciate that. Because, and this stuff really bothers me as a linguist, because when you have the BE or an EN at the end of the word, that means it's German, right? I don't know, I'm not a German person, I don't know any, well, my heritage is German, but I don't know any German. So, like, you take a bereave, right? Well, you can't reave. The B is a prefix, right? So, like, when I hear the word bereave, I think sad.
Yeah.
Right?
Time to heal.
Sorrowful, maybe even depressed.
Grief.
Grief in some capacity, right?
A time of mourning.
Mourning.
Of isolation to deal with a
Mourning for what?
loss.
Lost. So in this case, we're gonna say it's Simeon, and then also maybe Benjamin, because he doesn't know if everything's gonna work out with Benjamin. Okay? This is where the original language really helps out, okay? So the Hebrew word means to grieve the loss of a child. It can also mean to miscarry or to have a child killed. Okay? So he's basically saying, I have killed my children. I have killed them. That last word, that's basically what it's saying.
Oh, responsible for what might come.
Yes. And what has happened and what might happen with Benjamin. What has happened with Simeon and what might happen with Benjamin. Okay? So that word is really, it's a very strong word in Hebrew. Where when we read it in the English, and we go back to the German, we may not get the original meaning of that word.
And he repeats it twice.
He repeats it twice, so when you see things repeated in Hebrew, if they're a really long sentence, they just want to make sure that you know what's going on. If they repeat a word that's a lot more serious, it's a separate verbal construction that tells you this thing is actually like really serious to me. Okay? And I think we've talked about that before. Maybe, I think the example that I used was coffee. If you repeat a word, it intensifies it, right? So if I say, I need coffee, you're like, oh, okay, that's great for you. Like, I'm sure everyone else does too. But if you say, I need coffee, what does that mean? That means you want some good coffee, right? Like you want the stuff that's gonna, so it intensifies what you're saying. And Hebrew does that all of the time with words. Greek does not, actually. But Hebrew, that's the way that, because Hebrew is an oral language, when you repeat it, it intensifies the meaning of the word. Okay? So we have that, and let's see, that's verse 14. So let me look at my translation. Yeah, it's a PL. So it's the intensified of the intensified. So it's like doubly intensified, that word. Okay? So you can make other connections to other parts of Genesis too, like arise and go. That happens with Abraham in chapter 12, right? When God gives him the original calling to arise and go to Haran. Okay? So we have this little echo of what we've seen before with some of the other patriarchs. And Jacob, maybe unbeknownst to him, is repeating similar patterns. Going to a foreign land. They're not going to settle there yet, but they will. Okay? Good. All right, verse 15. So the men took this present, the present of all of that stuff, and they took double the money with them and Benjamin, and they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Okay? So that verse makes it sound like it just happened the next day. Right? Like, the travel from Canaan to Egypt cannot be done in one day, walking, even with donkeys or camels or whatever you think that they might have. Like, that could have been at least a month, maybe a couple months to get down there, okay? So, we just have to know, because the author, the narrator of the story, is trying to move past the things that aren't interesting and get to the good stuff. So that's why that verse only goes real quick, okay? Verse 16. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, "It is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us, to make us servants and seize our donkeys." So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house, and said, "Oh my lord, we come down for the first time to buy food, and we came to the lodging place. We opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." He replied, "Peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they should eat bread there. Anything?
We're going to have, they were taken to Joseph's house, which would be, I would say, unordinary.
Unorthodox?
That would make me a little nervous. We're going to the man's house. What has he in store for us? Are we gonna leave your wife or prison or what's gonna
Servants
happen?
and, yeah.
And let's give the full story to the Joseph servants and all, but don't be afraid. Now, that would make a person afraid. Right there, don't be nervous, everything's gonna be fine. That's not always the house, what is going on.
What is going on? There's, I mean, it's a lot.
But what's interesting is the servant replies, "Peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you." So this servant obviously knows about Joseph's God and how this God has been helping Egypt. And there's a level of understanding there. I mean, maybe they worship many gods in Egypt, but they know that Joseph's God is the one that's in control.
Well, and it's also possible that Joseph told him to say that, and he's just repeating the command from his master, right? But that there is enough there to know that even the servants knew that Joseph did not worship the Egyptian gods, right?
Right.
I think that's fair for us to say. Good. Anything else?
And then they witnessed the washing of their feet.
Washing of their feet is a
And
big
then the
deal.
donkeys were fed.
Donkeys were fed. Do you normally wash someone's feet if you're going to make them a servant?
No.
Are you normally going to wash someone's feet if you're going to kill them?
No.
No. So they have this internal fear of what's happening, but they have the external things being shown to them that are good, right? So there's, hi, how are you?
Okay?
Good. Welcome. So we have, have I ever talked to you about John Kleinig?
No.
Ever told you about him? So if you want to look up any of his books, if you need something to read that's a little bit theological, Kleinig is like the absolute best. So I have one of his books over here in the library for people to borrow called Grace Upon Grace, The Spirituality of Today. It looks like a thick read, but it's really big print, so it goes really quickly. He has this, and I don't think this originated with him, but he's the one that's kind of pushing it out in the world right now, is that sin is nothing more than a guilty conscience. And so absolution, or the removal of sin, is a clear conscience. Okay? So, Joseph's brothers, right now, are living with this guilty conscience. They're living in their sin, and their sin keeps on coming back to bite them. Right? Well, this bad thing is happening because we sinned. Well, this bad thing is happening because we sinned. This bad thing is happening. Well, I mean, it kind of is a little bit that they're put in this situation because they killed their brother and their father doesn't want to give up the other one because he's afraid that the same thing is going to happen because they did that to him. Right? So there is an aspect to that, but the famine is not because of their sin. The famine, they don't have food because they killed their brother, right? So that there's different aspects to it. But notice that their first response is always, this is happening because we sinned. Okay? So they're living without a clear conscience. They're living without that absolution of saying, I sinned, or they should say, we sinned against Joseph and Jacob, their father, and God. Those are the three people they need to confess to. Okay? And so this guilty conscience is going to shape, mold your identity and the way that your brain thinks. So it's really important for us as Christians to work off of this clear conscience of knowing that we are saved by grace alone and that our absolution comes from God when we confess our sins. In the Lutheran Church, we do this corporately in the worship service beginning, whenever we celebrate the divine service, but also you can do that individually with me in the office, right? If your conscience is feeling guilty, that's something that we need to talk about so that you can live more freely, okay? In more liberty. So that's what I notice when I read the Joseph story, is that the brothers, they just can't get past this sin. It's just always nagging on them no matter what they do. Okay? Good. Anything else? They're going to eat bread there. If they eat bread with Joseph, what does that mean? It's not communion, don't go there.
Sit down like a family.
If you sit down like a family, when you break bread with people, when you give people food, that generally means that you like them, right? That you don't just do that for anyone off of the street. You don't just say, oh yeah, come on in. Everybody can come into my house. I'm going to feed whoever comes and it'll be fine. Right? We generally don't do that. Although we're going to learn on Sunday that might be something that we could maybe practice. But this is like, there's a lot of positive things in this paragraph that we just read. All right? All right, last one. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them and bowed down to him on the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" And they said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they set before him the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. So what do you think?
Benjamin is the favorite again.
Benjamin, okay. So Joseph, who was the favored one from Jacob, who was the favored from his mom, Rebecca, right, is now favoring his mother, Rachel's only other son, Benjamin. So Joseph has not learned anything from all of this because he's still playing the favor game. All right? Not something that you want to do. That's not helpful. That also shows us that Joseph knows what he's doing, right? The way that the English and the Hebrew reads verse 33, the last verse on that page, and they sat before him the firstborn according to his birthright and the youngest according to his youth. the way that that's traditionally interpreted is that Joseph is the one that told them where to sit. And so he's telling them, basically, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here, and it was in birth order. Which, if you do that for 10 people, the statistics of that are kind of astounding that that would work out. So that's why the next verse, 34, the end of 33, and the men looked at one another in amazement. That's why that phrase is there. Because otherwise, if they just sit down, they're not going to be amazed, right? So that's a little explanation to that.
Yeah, how would he know?
Right.
To
How
put them in that order?
it should not work out that way, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, what else?
They bowed down to him.
They bowed down to him, right? And so that is like one of the major climaxes of this entire Joseph story, right? That's how the whole thing started, when Joseph has his dream and says, hey, y'all are going to bow down to me. And they're like, yeah, no, we're going to kill you. Right? Like, so now we have this partial fulfillment. Why am I saying it's a partial fulfillment? Why is it not a full, complete fulfillment of that dream?
They don't know who it is.
They don't know who he is. And B, do you remember what the dream said? Do you guys remember the dream from 37?
The sheaves bowing down.
It's the sheaves, and then what was the other dream? It was the sun and the moon and the stars. What did the sun represent? No.
The new day?
The sun was the dad, the mom was the moon, and the stars were the brothers in the dream. Okay? So it's a partial fulfillment of that dream because his dad isn't with them. So it's important for us to remember chapter 37 when we read this chapter, but it's also going to become important for us to remember that when Jacob actually goes down to Egypt. Okay? Excellent. Let's see, what word? That's verse 28. Yeah, it's the regular word to worship, right? When you bow down, you worship. So because this is used as going down to a person, it's not translated as worship, it's just translated as bow down. In other times when people bow down to God, it's translated not bow down, but it's translated as worship. Okay, good. Any other comments, questions, concerns? There's more here. He's asking about the father, right? He cares about them. The thing that's really interesting to me is verse 30, because it seems like a weird thing to happen. So then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep, and he entered his chamber and wept there. Does that sound weird to you in English?
Overcoming emotion, but he didn't want to show them.
Right, that's what that means, right? We don't talk like that, right? We don't say, oh, I love my sister so much, my compassion grows warm for her. This is not how it's used, right? So in Hebrew, the idiom means to be angry at someone, means that your nose burns against them. That's how you say to be angry. Okay? So in this case, it says his compassion burned for his brother. That's what it means to grow warm in Hebrew.
Do you think he had fear that there was harm to Benjamin and now he sees him in person?
It's possible. In the past, he doesn't feel that way anymore because he's in front of him, right? But I think...
Is that a parallel also to Jesus going out into the garden in Gethsemane, weeping there?
Yeah, because he had to leave and go to an isolated place. You could make that. Yeah, I like that. But what I'm trying to say is that think about a time, hopefully the most recently, when you had like a really, really strong feeling, one way or the other, happy or sad or whatever. The way that our bodies work, when you have that really strong emotion, what does your body do?
Responds to it.
It responds how?
Well, depending on the situation, heart rate might go up.
Heart rate's gonna go up, your blood pressure's gonna go up, what happens to your face?
Perspiring, yeah, redness.
You get red and you actually feel heat.
The dilation.
The dilation from all of the blood that's rushing to your head, right? So it's not that, it's actually a really beautiful thing that the Hebrew says, well, my nose grows hot against you. Because it's like this physical reaction that you're feeling, how angry you are at someone. And in this case, it's not anger, but it's he had that sense of peace, that compassion, that mercy, that was so overwhelming that he had a physical response to it. Of relief. And he had all of those endorphins, all of those adrenal reactions that caused his face to burn. That's a really strong reaction. And normally it's reserved for something bad. In this case, it's something good, which I really like how that is like a turn of phrase.
If you've ever seen any reunion or stories where children maybe were separated at when they were young, sent to separate homes, were raised in, sometimes without even the knowledge of each other, and they reconnect as adults. And if you watch those reunions, it's this reaction.
Or the POWs, right? In service, families think they're dead and they were actually captured and come back alive.
Or not even that dramatic, just, like one of these military service men that's never met their kid.
Yeah.
Right? And then they come back and it's
Yeah.
cry thinking about it, you know what I mean? Like,
It's just overwhelming.
it tears your heart open. So, so I like how the Hebrew connects it to a physical action that our body does. Okay? Good. All right. We didn't get to the last verse. That word to be merry with is the same verb from chapter 9. Do we remember what happened in chapter 9? After the flood? What happened after the flood? The rainbow. What happened after the rainbow?
Noah whipped up some wine.
Noah whipped up some wine, got drunk, and his sons uncovered his nakedness, right? It's the same verb. So it's not so much that they were just all happy. They all got drunk together. Is what it really says. Okay? So we've got all of this positive stuff, and the chapter ends on a not great note. And the English translator tried to make it a little less bad than what it actually is. Okay? That happens quite often. Alright? So let's end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So we'll do chapter 44 next week. I'll prepare chapter 45 just in case we want to cover 2 chapters, and we'll see how we go. All right? Hi.